And as I mentioned, it was the yahrzeit of the fellow whose class, this class is sponsored in honor of. So whoever wants to have a bite, we'll say l'chaim later, but you can already start Mazonos now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'arei b'nei mitzvos.
Amen.
What's the name?
Aryeh Leib ben Zev Wolf. Sham Shan Aliyah. You know what? We'll say l'chaim too. Why not?
Aryeh Leib ben Zev.
Zev Wolf.
We did last year as well, right?
Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shachol yom right?
Amen.
L'chaim l'chaim Sham Shan Aliyah. There's also some chips here, some hummus. All right, Rabbi Saib. Here we go. We're starting with Seif Zayin in the Mechaber.
No.
Mutter lo durch Pilpelin. Oh yeah, the yahrzeit. Aryeh Leib ben Zev Wolf. No? Einem loich beyachar harbe pulim hadoshim shnes bashlu b'kli pasam. No problem, we'll do it right now. You're not allowed to salt together many beans and lentils that were cooked with their husk. What's the point of this? Normally, no, even for eating. Even for eating.
So if you're cooking, Shabbos.
Yep. Bikli pasan. Bikli pasan. If you cook them with their we don't, but they used to.
But today it's so big out, basically.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, because of the light, and in a minute it will come out.
So, if they are okay, I don't know. So,
walls.
I think they wait with the
No, it's the light.
I know
The warm.
The light's been on for a while.
No, but now it's getting hot, warm a little bit.
Last time this happened, Aiton took a pan of water, an aluminum pan, and put it over here. By the time your shit
You
was
want to
up,
go to the other?
no, we started already. I prefer just to.
No, it's going to be more.
all the bugs were in the pan. He says, from the light, they see the reflection. So
I'm going to turn on the light over there. Maybe they will go over there.
What?
Turn the lights here.
No. Then you give
Don't tell me no.
All right. So the point is that when you cook them with their
Turn the
klipa,
light for 1 minute.
you
They're going over there in 1 minute. The other people know.
Yeah, but then what the other people are gonna have a problem. If it's just a problem.
Trust me in that.
all right. So if you cook them with their klipa, you cook the beans and the lentils with their klipa. So then they're still hard. Normally, when you cook vegetables, after you cook them, salting them does not soften them or change them in a way that is similar to pickling vegetables. In other words, when you pickle vegetables, the salt changes it in a very significant way. But when you salt cooked vegetables, it doesn't make much of a change in them. That's why it's only asur if you cooked it with their klipa, so it's still hard, and the salting them softens it. Shomea?
Yeah, that's not comfortable. Really not.
All right, and brera.
We go in the other room.
We're gonna have to go in the other room. Okay, my students, my long distance students, we're gonna have to
Everybody
take a break because we are invaded by termites and we're moving to the base medrash. So we're going to have to take a little break and continue in a few minutes. I'm not going to stop the broadcast, but I'm not going to speak for a few minutes while I transport everything. Sorry about that.
Everybody's on their spot, please. Thank you. Don't turn the light off.
Huh?
Come on.
Yeah, leave the light on, and all go in. Yeah, with glass coming back. I wonder how long it takes for them to, Rabbi, can I carry something for you?
What I don't understand is why doesn't this shul take? I told him about it last time.
You just want me to carry it?
Please. And you have to move this over there. Move it over there a bit. After reach the- No. All right, Rabbi Isai, thank you for your patience. Oh my gosh, they're here. Look at that. They followed us. All right. Shomea? Only Bikli Pasuk. Okay, we're continuing with Zion. It's only because they're cooked Bikli Pasan, so they're still hard. And when you salt them, they become soft. No, they were cooked in the klipa. Then you open them up and you salt them. Shenisbashlu b'kli pasan. Shenisbashlu b'kli pasan. They were cooked in the klipa. You're not salting them in the klipa. What's the point of that? It was cooked in its klipa, which is why it's still hard. And in order to soften it, you're salting it. So if you're salting it a little bit, one at a time, it's mutter, just like it's nine. But biyachad, the yachad is a problem. Just like other vegetables, you can't do more than one at a time.
What's the page on?
אנחנו בשין כ"א זין. Zion. Okay, my friends. Mutter loduch pilpulin.
And here, Shimcha.
כן, אבל עוד לא התחלנו שם. Mutter loduch pilpulin אפילו הרבה יחד. You're allowed to crush pepper, even many of them together. As long as you do it with the handle of a knife and in a plate. Okay, so this is what we mentioned already, that even though it could be a bowl, plate, lo mishana. Here's the thing, my friends. Kasha. Here's the thing. If you were to crush pepper with a grinder or with a mortar and a pestle, which is, the things that they have pictures of in the pharmacy. If you were to do that on Shabbos, that would be a chiyuv, chorus, that would be a mamish and isur d'oraisa, because that is tochen, that is crushing. However, if you crush with a shinui gadol, with a big shinui, then it's mutter. Now, usually, this is an exception to the rule. Usually, we don't allow a person to do a malacha with a shinui, because Chazal didn't want Shabbos to become like a zilzal. People should treat Shabbos lightly. But over here, it's considered a shinui gadol. Not only are you not doing it in the usual way, but you're doing it in a very unusual way. It's a very difficult thing to crush pepper with the handle of a knife. Mm-hmm. Now, when it says bekaira, there's two ways of understanding this. Some say it means that you're allowed to crush it either with a handle of a knife or with a kaira. You could take a bowl or a plate and crush it on the table with them. You understand? This is the item that you're using to crush with. Some say no. Some say it means that you have to do two shinuyim. You have to crush with the handle of a knife into a kaira instead of into a machtesh, which is what they would normally crush into, which is the bowl underneath it, the regular bowl, the mortar. Yossi's not here, so you can't tell me which is which. I always get mixed up. But I think it's the mortar, which is the bottom. You can't do it into a mortar, even a wooden mortar, which normally they would do pepper into a stone mortar. But you can't even do it into a wooden mortar. You have to do it into a kaira. So that represents a double shinui. Some say you have to do a double shinui. Some say it's enough just to do the shinui of the handle of the knife. That's the Magen Avraham. The Taz says you have to do it into a plate also. Depends how you learn pshat in uve kaira. No, anything you want to grind with a big shinui is mutter. Anything you want to grind with a big shinui.
You go, I can use it, especially with the cup. Usually when you use the garlic,
right.
You use a cup and mash it.
Could be yes. I don't want to say for sure because I didn't see that clearly. And it's hard to know exactly what is a shinui gadol. You understand? What is a shinui gadol? The handle of a knife, it's actually difficult to crush peppers. They're very small. But the handle of a knife, is a cup considered a shinui gadol? That I have to find clearly before I can say yes. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't see it yet. Maybe. Whatever is considered a shinui gadol is mutter. So, for example, I can tell you what I read. I don't want to say what I didn't read because it's difficult. But what I did read is that Moshe says you could use the handle of a spoon. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. One second. Let me get it right. No, the Chazon Ish says you can use the handle of a spoon to crush fruits or vegetables for children that need to eat it. Bananas, for example, avocados. So he says it has to dafka be the handle of the spoon, not the other side of the spoon.
You can't use a fork though.
A fork for sure not. That's the best way to crush. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says no, even a spoon instead of a fork is already a shinui gadol. You understand? So there you have a machlokes about what's a shinui gadol as far as avocados and bananas. Yeah, I don't want to apply it to garlic until I see it clearly, but that's the idea. Actually, once we're talking about bananas and avocados, I do want to mention a machlekes of the Achronim about that. So, Chazon Ish holds that you cannot crush a banana or an avocado, even if it becomes completely mushed. Why? Because he holds that just like you cannot crush one thing into many pieces, you also cannot crush it into a paste.
All the fresh vegetable, you're not allowed to, but on cooked vegetable, you're allowed. I don't remember where I'm going to find it.
Cooked vegetables, what Reb Shlomo Zalman says is if it's so soft that if you pick it up, it's going to fall apart, like a banana that's so overripe. If you pick up, I'm just saying, for example, if it's so soft that if you, I mean, obviously the peel is holding it together, but if not for the peel, if it would fall apart when you pick it up, then it's already basically mush, so you could just mush it more. That's the only heter that Shlomo Zalman gives. I'm saying, so that's according to the Chazon Ish, it's a problem. If it's not so soft that it falls apart when you pick up one part, then Reb Shlomo Zalman holds the problem. On the other hand, Reb Moshe holds that the whole idea of Tochen is when you crush one thing into many things. You take one piece and you break it up into many pieces. If you crush it in such a way,
many olives.
exactly, like first of all, like grain. That's what they did in the Mishnah. Like what we're learning here to crush pepper, and like what we're going to learn in the coming seifim about crushing fruits and vegetables into many pieces, cutting, not crushing, cutting them small into many pieces, as we're going to learn. So all of that is considered tochen. But Rav Moshe holds, if you crush something, if you mash it in such a way that it becomes one big entity, that's not tochen. Because that's the opposite of tochen. Tochen is to separate, and this is to keep it connected. Now, Rav Farkash has a chiddush that I just saw today. And he wants to say that really, even the Chazon Ish is only machmir if there are pieces in the mush. Like if it's going to be completely mush, like mash, like mamish, just one big, mush, then even the Chazon Ish agrees that it's no problem. And the whole machlokes is if you mash it in such a way that there are pieces, but the pieces are connected and held together by the mush, that's when Rav Moshe is mekel and Rav Shlomo Zalman is machmer. And there he says there's room to be machmer. It's better to be machmer. Only do it with the shinui, like we said here, shinui gadol. But he says if it's going to be so soft, if you have such a soft avocado, such a soft banana, even if it doesn't fall apart when you pick it up, like Rav Shlomo Zalman says, but it's so soft that when you mash it, it's going to be completely mashed without any pieces. He says that even Chazon Ish would be mekel, and therefore you can even do it with a fork.
But once you store it,
This is avocado. You put avocado, it's soft, but whatever, I'm not taking the level, between two slices of bread. Now you smash the bread just to make the avocado liquid.
No, I don't think that makes a difference. No, that's such a small difference. No.
in the process of mushing it,
Yep.
aren't you gonna at some point have pieces and mush? And you just keep mushing the pieces until it's all mush?
That it could be is a problem. I think that's a problem, even according to Farkash. He's talking about if it's so soft that you don't actually have pieces. I don't think he's makel if you have to first make it into pieces and then keep on crushing it, because once you did a problem, you know what I mean, you can't make it better. You know what I'm saying?
Like the banana.
You can't catch the mosquito and then let it go.
The banana is for the baby, if you can smush it with the fork.
So according to this, if you smash it with a fork, unless it's very, very soft, it's a problem. Take hummus, unless you smash it with a fork, it's a problem. And the only heter is if you smash it, if it's very soft, then you can even smash it with a fork. But if it's a little bit soft, then you can smash it, and it will still have pieces and some liquid, whatever. Then you should rather smash it with a spoon or even the handle of a spoon. Or machlok. Whether you should use a spoon.
We noise to the baby without.
I'm sorry?
We noise for the baby, like it's something like you shouldn't be criticizing with the baby. We consider it Tochen.
That's a good question. The Alter Rebbe says clearly, as does the Mechaber, that you're not allowed to chew if you're not eating. Yeah. That was that?
Anything or?
Yeah, where is it?
To some of it, or to all of it, and only do some of it?
Where is it? I thought I had it.
We're on the finish.
Give me 1 second, please.
It's inside.
How much, for tomorrow, maybe the situation we could maybe doing the person transformation.
No, we can just do it in here. Unless the room is being used.
Rafael. I call him. I'm going to call him.
Okay, but let me first find out about this one. Davar she'en chofetz la'ochle v'lo la'achile l'tinoik la'alter asel le'aseh b'shem b'shem t'china. אתה שומע? Alter Rebbe says Sifyut Gimel. Yeah. If you're not going to eat it right away or feed it to your baby, then you can't chew it. But if you're going to feed it to your baby, then it's mutter. It's like a hemshech. It's like you're eating and he's eating it. It's all a hemshech. But if you're not going to, then you're not allowed to. Why would you?
Yeah.
So the example he sends you to Shin Lamed Aleph, where it talks about a certain medicine that they used to chew and then put on wounds. That you can't do unless it's sakanas nefashos. So that's what he's talking about. Okay, Rabbi Isai. Okay, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba. Ein koitzin melach b'modach shel eitz. You are not allowed to crush. We're doing ches in the mechaber. You're not allowed to crush salt with a wooden mortar, because that's not a big shinui.
They're waiting here, waiting like this.
Mani agid. I told them last week. It's up to them. Aval maraseku biyad shel sakin uve'etz hapar ve'en choishesh. But they can crush with the handle of a knife, just like we said before about pepper, and the eitz hapar. How do you translate eitz hapar? Or a stirring spoon, the handle of a stirring spoon. That's no problem. The dafka melech hagas, specifically with coarse salt. Aval melech shoya dak mitchila, but salt that was originally fine, v'nisbashal v'nasab season, and it was cooked and then it became into bigger pieces. You're allowed to cut it with a knife just like you're allowed to cut bread. Okay, so this is an important concept and it's called ein tochen achar tochen. Just like we have the concept of ein bishul achar bishul. Ein afia achar afia. What else?
Water and ice.
What?
If you put water on the ice, is
אין מה אחר מה, תגיד. אין, בא. מה?
oh,
זה לא שמעתי.
מים, כן. איך קוראים לזה פעם שעברה שכחנו? אמרנו לא.
Actually, I think the only other example we gave was Ein Tochen Tochen. We said already Ein Tochen Tochen in an earlier simon when we spoke about, I think in Shin Chaf, when we spoke about something that was the grapes and the olives that were already crushed before Shabbos, almost completely crushed, you're allowed to finish crushing them on Shabbos because they're already considered crushed. So it's Ein Tochen Tochen. I think it was the only other example.
Yes.
But here it's the same. Here it's the same. Ein Tochen achar Tochen. So for example, you're allowed to make matzah meal on Pesach. You have matzah. You want to make matzah meal. It's achar shel Pesach. You want to make matzah meal. You didn't buy. You want to make it yourself. So, I mean, you can't use a kli hamiyuchad lekach. You can't use a regular grinder. But if you want to use a hammer or something, something that's different, a shinui, my hand for sure. Ein Tochen achar Tochen, a knife or whatever.
But it's not talking. You can pull matzah and mash it.
Why not?
The matzah is not talking.
Why not? Why not?
It's a whole matzah.
So what? You crush it till it's small, till it's matzah meal. Why is that not Tochen? I mean, it's not because of Ein Tochen achar Tochen. But if not for that, you're making flour.
In the beginning, something was already like grounded in a certain form, but the matzah was grounded before.
It was made into flour. From the wheat, it was made into flour. And then it was put into dough and into matzah. But it was already made into flour. Ein Tochen achar Tochen.
I feel like when it becomes matzah, it wasn't like anything. It's food.
What do you mean?
It wasn't in the form of food. I feel like they took food and they grounded it.
אני לא הבנתי. You took the chita, so what? אז מה? One second. So who said it has to be edible? Who said it has to be edible? מי אמר לך? Who said? I understand that, but who said it has to be edible when you do the tchina? I don't understand. Who's calling it a food? Masa kashur. I don't understand what you're saying. Ein Tochen achar Tochen. Ken?
It can be even on things that you don't eat.
Yeah, why not?
On Shabbos?
Why not? If you give me an example, I mean, I don't know what an example is, but if you give me an example, why not?
It's where you're going to see a lot of grounded.
That's a separate question. But I'm saying, if you give me an example, same thing. Same thing, there's no difference. I mean, the Gemara says, if you make sawdust, nesoret shel charashim, if you make sawdust, that's Tochen. That's Tochen. You're taking wood and you're making sawdust out of it. Even if you just cut wood into very small pieces, that's also Tochen. So I don't know an example, but if you, one second, here's an example. No, but that's a separate thing. If not for Tochen, cutting wood is only uvdin d'chayil. If you would cut into big pieces in such a way that you're not making a keli, uvdin d'chayil. So, I'll give you an example. You know how they have, let's say a tabletop that's made of crushed wood. You know what I'm saying? Pressed wood. If you unpress that wood, if you take it apart, when you're absent-minded people, in yeshiva, they used to do all the time. They used to break apart the tables and whatever else they could. I mean, that's muktzah, but it's not tochen. Even though you're taking one piece, you're making it into many pieces, but it was already many pieces. So you're just breaking it up again. So the same thing here. And the same thing with melach also, that was once fine. Okay, Tess. Mutter lachtech basar mavushal itzali dak besakin. It is permissible to cut cooked meat or roasted meat very fine with a knife. All right. Here is the pshat. Here's the pshat. Whenever you cut food, really, it shouldn't be tochen. Logically, it shouldn't be tochen. When you cut food, even into small pieces, logically, it should not be tochen. Why not? Because what you're simply doing is getting the food ready to eat.
Yep.
Nobody wants to take a bite out of a massive piece of food. It's rude. Besides the fact that it's not easy to do, it's also just not manners. So everybody cuts their food before they eat it. I mean, if you're from England, maybe you even cut your pizza before you eat it. But, most people cut, at least their chicken or their, whatever it is, their salad, you don't bring a whole thing of lettuce to the table. You cut it up so people should be able to eat the normal size pieces. So logically, Tochen shouldn't really apply to food. However, because we know that in the Mishkan, it was done with food, so therefore, it is also with food. But just like in the Mishkan, they used gidule karka, they used things that grow from the ground, so too, the only food that Tochen applies to is gidule karkas, things that grow from the ground. So when it comes to meat, cheese, and other foods that do not grow from the ground, there is no isser tchina. There is no isser to cut into small pieces. Because A, it's food, and logically food shouldn't, the rules of tchina shouldn't apply to food. You'll say in the Mishkan they had it, yeah, but they didn't have it by food that was not growing from the ground. That is the chiddush of the story with the meat.
You're allowed to cut it, so.
Exactly, you're allowed to cut.
Oh,
Actually, that's a question the Magen Avraham asks.
so why did they continue to see instead of no basar chai?
Basar chai, I'll tell you in a minute. Basar chai, I'll tell you in a minute. But since you asked, I'll tell you in a minute. I'll tell you in a minute. But before I tell you, since you asked if behema is called gedulei karka, I have to mention that the Magen Avraham asks a contradiction. Because in Siman Shin Hey, when we learn about mefarek and disha, and one of the rules of disha is that ein disha ela begedulei karka, that disha only applies to things that grow from the ground. There it says that you're not allowed to milk a cow. Mefarek is a tulda of dash, right? Taking out the liquid from the tulda of dash, because an animal is considered gedulei karka, because it eats the things that grows on the ground, so it's considered to grow from the ground. So over there, we don't consider it. We consider gedulei karka. And over here, we don't. It doesn't answer the question.
So what? So if you're holding that behema can be gedulei karka,
So
what
what?
can be the difference between mevusha and chai?
No, Mushal and Chai, I'll answer in a minute, one thing at a time. I'm answering your other question. If behema is gedulei karka or not, the answer is here, it's brought that it's not. In Shinhei, it's brought that it is. And that's a question of the Magen Avraham. No, the Magen Avraham is the one who asks the contradiction. Which of the Rishonim here says, I'm sorry? It's not just the Magen Avraham, I think it's the Mechaber over there. That's the question. No, the Magen Avraham is the one who asks the question. I think it's the stira in the Mechaber is what it is. I think it's the Mechaber who says between Shinhei and over here, exactly. Let me just make sure. Shinhei. A minion, Raphael said he would come and bring somebody, so I'm still counting on him. Without him, we're lost. Not 2, not 4, not 6, not 8. With him and his friend, we're good. Okay, I mean, here the Mechaber in Shinhei is mashma that you can't milk. Because it says you can have a goy milk. So it's clear that a Jew cannot. But he doesn't expressly say about Gedulei Karka or not. Okay. The bottom line is, in answer to your other question, Shomea, what's the difference between raw and cooked? Let me read it first in the Ramah, then I'll answer your question. אבל also lachtach dak bosa chaylef nea oifis. Toel verin yichon leichle blechituch kamashu leoichel. It's forbidden to cut raw meat into small pieces to feed to the birds because you're making it into food. Here's the thing. People generally don't eat raw meat. People generally don't eat raw meat. There are some people that do. We said before, maybe it's not muktzah because some people do eat it, but most people don't.
It's only if you eat, it's feeding it to.
One second.
To the animal.
One second. Now, most people also don't feed raw meat to animals because it's expensive. Why would you do that? They would maybe feed nevela to an animal, but not a waste of meat. Now, it seems that they used to cut up meat and feed it to the birds. Yeah. I don't know which birds.
Vultures.
No. Kosher birds. What are they going to feed the vultures for? They want to feed their own birds. That's what it seems. That's what it seems. Now, listen carefully. Because this meat was not considered edible until it's cut, meaning to say, people don't eat it. You don't feed it to dogs. So until it's cut, it's not considered edible. Some people, most people don't. Most people don't. It's edible, but it's not eaten. It's not eaten. So here's the svara. When you cut it, you're making it edible. That means when you started, it wasn't edible for most people. So therefore, this exception that the rules of Tochen doesn't apply to food is not true because it's not really food.
So it will be actually more makabapatish because it's
not makabapatish, Tochen. Not about makabapatish, it's about Tochen.
It's actually the malacha. This is how you find it.
No. Actually, the Taz has this contradiction, as does the Magen Avram, and the Alter Rebbe explains. Here's the thing. There's a machlokes in the Gemara if you're allowed to create food on Shabbos or not. Create food on Shabbos. For example, I'll give you an example. The Gemara discusses it. Let's say you have a nevela that the dogs can't eat. It's too big, it's too hard. They can't eat it. The only way they'll be able to eat it, is if you cut it. No, it's not muktzah. It died before Shabbos. It's perfectly good animal food. Animal food is not muktzah. So the only thing is that it's not edible until you cut it up. So the Gemara has a machlokes. One opinion says if it's not edible, you can make it edible. Nabach, the poor animals, they're so hungry. You can make it edible. But if it's already edible, then you can't cut it up because you're doing unnecessary work. They can eat it without your help. What are you working for them for? Enjoy your Shabbos instead. That's one opinion. The other opinion says just the opposite. You can't cut it to make it edible because it's like makabapatish. You're creating food. But if it's already edible, you can do them a favor and make it easier for them to eat and cut it up. The halacha is like the opinion that says that you're allowed to make it edible, but you're not allowed to cut it if it's already edible. That means you're allowed to create food. I mean, you're not creating out of thin air, but you're allowed to make something edible. It's not makabapatish, but you can't cut extra if it's tircha for animals. So now, when it says here, when the Ramah says here, the kamashvile oichel, you're making it oichel. It's not because you're creating oichel and it's a makabapatish issue, because we see in Shinchav Dalet that we paskin that that's allowed. The issue is that until you cut it, it wasn't food. And therefore, the heter of cutting something into small pieces, if it's already edible, doesn't apply because it's not considered edible.
So here for specific animals, you're allowed to cut it small pieces.
In Shinchav Daled, when it says you're allowed to cut it, it's not small pieces. Haha, small pieces is not allowed. That's Tochen. Shinchav Daled, you're allowed to cut it into big pieces and make it edible for them. B'vakasha. Here we're talking about cutting it to small pieces for birds. Tashameh, that's the birds and animals. For a bird, you cut into big pieces, it's nothing. But an animal, you cut into big pieces, b'vakasha. If you want to cut into small pieces for birds, no, you can't do it.
So what is the rule to smash the food to baby? Cannot be a baby.
It's different.
Whoa. You're talking about a banana?
Anything.
No. A banana, because it's a mush, so it's not into separate pieces. And if it has separate pieces, then it's better to do it with the shino, like we said.
Yeah, but here for the bird, you don't do any sheep. Here,
That's why it's awesome. That's why it's awesome. That's exactly it. Awesome. Awesome, lachtek, dak. It's about what's around. No,
So Rabbi, you said if it's a big piece, you're allowed to make it.
to make it edible for the dogs, yeah.
What about from the big piece to make it edible for the bird?
That's already an interesting question. That's already an interesting question.
Well, now you're talking small pieces again.
No.
No. He has a different question. He has a question. If it's a nevela, not kosher meat.
Yeah.
If it's a nevela and it's already cut up, so it's fit for the birds. It's fit for the dogs. So it's already considered food. Now you're going to cut it up for the birds. So you're taking food that's not gedule karka, and you're cutting it into small pieces. I think it's mutter. The big chiddush. I think it's mutter. Very good. I just want to see how the Alter Rebbe says it about the meat. Just give me 1 second.
Anyone has the phone for a file?
I have it, but let me just see what's going on here.
Anything else, water?
Yes.
Yes?
Oh, you did that first.
Here it is. Vafa pishu roy lekov listen siv tessim the Alter Rebbe. Vafa pishu roy leklovim ein shem oichel lo b'shvil kach hoyel ve'ein oim leklov ben le'odom le'oifes mishmach mas chashivusay. It is set aside for humans or for fowl because of its importance. So it sounds like it should be. Because it's not oimid leklov. Because it's important. But what if it's an avela? So it's not important. Let me see what he says in Shinchav Daled. Give me a minute. Listen. Alter Rebbe does in Shin Chaf Aleph in Shin Chaf Aleph, he does send to Shin Chaf Aleph. So it's mashma that it's even by Nevela, he's telling you not to do it. That's what it sounds like. Just because he when he talks about Nevela, he says Ayin Siman Shin Chaf Aleph.
What you don't allow to do, Rabbi?
It sounds from Alter Rebbe like you can't cut it small, even if it's in Nevela. Not sure why though.
So how do you feed the? So how do you feed the
Basar
dog?
Chai is kosher meat.
So how do you feed the dog, Rabbi?
How do you know? For the dogs, you can cut it because you're not cutting it small, cutting it big.
For the dog, it's kosher.
No, but the question is it considered food because it's fit for the dogs? So here the Alter Rebbe says it's not fit for the dogs because it's chashuv. So the question was, if it's an aveda, it's not chashuv. What are you going to do with it?
Rabbi.
It's either for the goyim or for the dogs. The dogs you own, you may as well save money on the animal, on the dog food.
So let's go back to my question. So if I have a big piece,
Yeah.
I don't have a dog, so I cannot cut it at all. So it's small for bird. It's a big piece. Not dog can eat it, no animal can eat it. It's too big. Now I'm talking about if you cut it to the bird.
It's a big piece, nevela or
Nevela,
kosher.
nevela.
Logically, I think it should be mutter to cut an nevela for the birds,
Because you cut it for the.
but I don't know.
They said like you cut it one time, you cannot cut it the second time. So anything you cut from the first time, it's okay. Not to make it the second time smaller than that. That's why I understand.
I don't know. This parsha has to be revisited because I don't know. Let me see what Rafal says. Just gonna call him, make it easier. Sort of the back and forth. Not answering. All right, here we go. Hago, back to the Ramah and Tess. I will also you're not allowed to cut up meat very small in front of the birds. Because they can't eat it without cutting it, you're making it into food. Down. Yud. Also the Grog Vina B'Shabbos. The Moirag Chorot Bal Pifios. Shakarin Railu. You're not allowed to grate cheese on Shabbos in a grater. Even though cutting cheese small is completely mutter on Shabbos, because it's not gedule karka, just like the meat is not, so too the dairy that comes from the meat is not. That's only if you're cutting with a knife, because a knife is not a kli hamiyuchad for tchina. You could use a knife for any number of things to cut. But a grinder or a grater is used for tchina. So that's ubdin dechol. Even though it's not tochen, but to use a kli that's meyuchad for tochen is ubdin dechol.
The hard-boiled egg is you have those little cutter things. Are you allowed to use that? Because I've heard twice, yes, and once no. So You know what I'm referring to? It has like the wires.
I know exactly what you're referring to, and it's mutter gomer. It's mutter gomer. Because the whole thing is that a grater can be used for forbidden grinding. It can be used for permissible grinding, but because it can be used for forbidden grinding, and most of it is forbidden grinding, so to even if you're using the permissible way, it's usher. But the only thing you can use those egg cutters for is eggs, and you're allowed to cut them on Shabbos. So it's not a problem.
What about the cheese cutters? You have a big thick piece.
If it's made for cheese, it's mutter.
It's not grater.
I'm saying if it's made for cheese, it's mutter. Anyway, that just cuts it, doesn't grate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure mutter. I'm sorry? It's a grater, it means a grater. Not in a grater. Not in a grater. You can cut it, but you can't use a grater. Right? No. סכין וקרדום, כן, אבל לא במוירג חורץ בעל פיפיוס, שקוראים ריב אייזן בלושן אשכנז. שומע? סכין זה סכין, קרדום זה hatchet, מגירה זה serrated knife. Serrated knife. כמו saw. How do you say saw in Hebrew? מסור, זהו. אבל grater, איך אומרים grater? מגרדת, זה אסור. That's what he says. אבל אסור לגרד דק דק במוירג חורץ בעל פיפיוס. Okay. We continue and we say, Yud Aleph, Mutter lahashkos es atolosh kedei shelo yichmosh. You're allowed to put water on vegetables that are disconnected from the ground in order that they should not wilt. We learned this already in the Alter Rebbe last week, and the idea is that because the vegetables are edible for Shabbos, even though you're not planning to eat them per se, but because you could eat them, so if they're wilting, you're allowed to put water on them to preserve them. Excuse me.
Hot water too?
Hot. You can ruin them. Talking about vegetables that you want to keep fresh.
Clean.
Yeah. You know, lettuce, peppers, you know, they go bad. So you want to put them in salt and water to give them some life. That's mutter. You can soak them in water, yeah.
Hashkot, yes.
Not for cleaning. That we said is a boiler problem. This is just to give them. No, if they're already clean. Already clean. You're just putting it to keep them fresh. Okay, Rabbi said, before we learn Yud Beis, we have to learn the paper that I gave out since I worked so hard on it. Wouldn't want it to go unlearned. Okay, I didn't work so hard on it, but since I worked on it. All right, so the Gemara says in Shabbos, Ayin Dalet Amud Beis, that Hapoiris Silka B'Shabbos. Some say it should say Hapoirim Silka B'Shabbos. Or sorry, Haiman Deporim Silka. Silka, Selek. A person who chops beets, is how they translate it here. Chayev mishum tochen is chayev for tochen. I'll stop there. Sorry? That's how he translates it. He means cuts into small pieces. That's what it means. I mean, we're going to see in the Mefarshim many different understandings of this Gemara. But if we start off, that's what most Mefarshim say. Okay. 4 interpretations that I have for you today.
This is what you just quoted from the Gemara? What you said?
Yeah, this is in the Gemara. Ayin Dalet Amud Beis. Take Chumas, Vakasha. Okay, so here we go. Number one, Tosfos says it's only beets. Tosfos says only beets. Doesn't say why. He leaves that for the student to figure it out. Oh, the Ritva explains that it's talking about raw beets, which are only edible when they're cut. That means if you cut them small, you can eat raw beets. If Yossi was on the shear, he would definitely pipe in here. I've seen it. I've seen it in salads, by the way. You ever seen it? You see little slices of raw beets. Raw beets. They shred them, exactly. So Tosfos says that's, according to the Ritva, that's what Tosfos means. In other words, according to this Ritva, the way you understand Tosfos, if something is already edible and you're cutting it, that's not Tochen. Just like we said about meat. You're allowed to create food, but not in a way of Tochen. Create food, like cutting up a vela into big pieces, but not in a way of Tochen. That's shot number one in Tosfos. Shot number two in Tosfos is from the Rosh. The Rosh says because that's how it's normally eaten. It's not just because it's raw or cooked. It's about, that's the way it's normally eaten. So in other words, something that is normally chopped up is asur to chop. Something that's not, doesn't have to be chopped, it's not a problem. Yeah. Sorry? That's what we're trying to figure out.
But let's say you cut it half is cut it half, and few people until it ends up being like small piece. You're allowed?
No.
Why? Nobody actually cut it small.
Of course they did.
People just cut it to half.
Of course they did. At some point they cut it small.
That's right.
One of the people cut it small. Which one exactly? I don't know. One of the people cut it small. I will say, since you mentioned that case, I saw a very interesting chiddush. I think it's from the Iglei Tal.
By the way, Rabbi, shouldn't use Kedushin or the urine.
Why?
Because everything that all Kedushin, everything we given from Moshe. From Gila, I can show you it's from the.
Very nice. Very nice. I hear you. If it's a true chiddush, then it's not true because it's there's no real chiddush. I hear you. Okay, but here it is from the Iglei Tal. Listen to this. He says that the Rishonim say, most Rishonim say, that cutting vegetables small is a tulda of Tochen. It's not actual Tochen. It's a tulda of Tochen. It's not actual Tochen. Tochen is what they did with wheat, which is where they crushed it into granules. That's Tochen. Cutting a vegetable into small pieces is a tulda of Tochen. So here's his chiddush. He says, if you take it from small into granules, that's going to be a malacha. Because we know there's ein Tochen acha Tochen. But that's all if it's the same category. Meaning to say, if something is ground already to the point of Tochen of the Av, there's no issue to do tchina again, like with matzah meal. You know what I'm saying? If something is cut already to this size of, the tulda of Tochen, there's no issur to do it again. But to take it from the tulda to the Av is an issur. Very interesting chiddush. Anyway, but that's just on the side. The Nishmas Adam says that the chiddush of Tosfos is that beets you can't even cut up into large pieces, and other vegetables you can cut up into small pieces. That's the Nishmas Adam's pshat in Tosfos. It's a chiddush, but that's his opinion. The Chazon Ish says no. When Tosfos says dafka silka, he doesn't mean that. No, I think he holds that that's the way they used to eat beets. That was an exception. Beets was good enough in big pieces, but other things you needed small pieces. The Chazon Ish says something else. He says when Tosa says dafka silka, he doesn't mean silka as opposed to other vegetables. He means silka as opposed to basar and as opposed to lechem. Because basar is mutter because it's not gedule karka, lechem is mutter because ain't tochen achat tochen. He means dafka vegetables. He doesn't mean dafka this type of vegetable. Anyway, that's all Pshat and Tosfos. Then we have Rabbeinu Hananel, who says that this is talking about crushing and not cutting. Okay? Crushing and not cutting. Crushing would be to crush it. If you make a mush out of it. Yeah. It's probably talking about cooked. Must be talking about cooked, honestly. But I must say Rabbeinu Hananel's opinion is not brought on the poskim. The Rosh is another opinion, it's not brought on the poskim. But nevertheless, he says that it's a person who, inside the palm trees, there's like a flour-like substance. If you break open the palm tree, you can get out this powder, this type of powder. That's what we're talking about. No, that's like Tochen. To take out the powder from inside the palm tree. I don't know what they did with this powder. I don't know if it's edible. But that's the chiddush of the Rosh quoting Rabbeinu Hananel, actually. And finally, we have the Rambam, who says that this is only applying to vegetables that you're going to cook. Mashma, that if it's already edible, then it's not a problem. Just like we said before in the Ritva's opinion of Tosfos, that the only thing is because it's not cooked yet, and you're going to cook it, that's why it's Tochen. But if it's already edible, you're cutting a salad, that's not Tochen. Anyway, the bottom line is that the psak of the Mechaber is that it applies to all vegetables, even if they're raw. He doesn't bring down the Rambam. I mean, in the Beis Yosef he does, but not in the Mechaber. He doesn't bring down Tosfos that it's only beets. He goes like the opinion of the Rashba. The Rashba says that it applies, Mechaber, that it applies to all fruits and vegetables. However, the Rashba also says a chiddush, which the Rama brings. It's interesting that the Mechaber doesn't bring it. The Rashba says a chiddush. When do we say that it's usher to cook, to cut fruits and vegetables? Dak is only if it's not right before eating. If it's right before eating, then it's called derech achila. Just like by boyer that it says, you're allowed to take what you need from what you don't need by hand, right before eating, right? Yes? Because that's derech achila. So if it's right before eating, cutting it up is called derech achila. Like we said before, people don't want to bite into a big chunk of lettuce or of anything.
Maybe you see your opinion on it. If it's before eating,
Yeah.
you're allowed to cut it small.
Exactly. The Rashba says that. I'm not making it up.
No problem. But before we discuss why you're not allowed to take a cooked vegetable and smash it with your fork, even so it also soft, eat it right away.
Oh, according to the Rashba, it should be mutter. According to the Rashba, it should be mutter. However, the Beis Yosef says that since the other Rishonim don't bring down this chiddush, the chiddush that you're allowed to cut it up right before eating, even though some of the Rishonim B'chlal don't hold that it's a problem. For example, the Rambam says it's only for cooking. Toysa says it's only beets. The Rosh says maybe it's only palm trees. But nevertheless, some of the Rishonim agree with the Rashba and the Gemara that it's talking about all fruits and vegetables, and they still don't bring down this chiddush that it's doesn't apply if you're about to eat it. Therefore, the Rashba says to cut it. Excuse me. The Beis Yosef says to cut it into chatichos gedolos ktsas. To cut it into somewhat big pieces. That's his psak. Again, in the Mechaber, for some reason, he doesn't bring it down. He just says. The Rama brings down the chiddush, but he doesn't. But I'm saying in the Beis Yosef he says you can cut it right before, but it should be chatichos gedolos ktsas. Yes. Yeah. If somebody already did it, exactly. If somebody already did it, then you can rely on it. You can rely on the Rashba, because the Rashba allowed it lechatchila, and once it's done, you can rely on him b'diavad. And the Magen Avraham says you don't even have to stop people from doing it. If you see people doing it, you don't have to stop them, because the Rashba is matir. It's good enough. Lechatchila, we should be machmir for ourselves, but people who are mekel, they have on whom to rely. So that's the psak of the Magen Avraham. The Alter brings it down also. The Alter brings it down that we should be strict, but if you see somebody else doing it, if he's your friend and he wants to listen to Alter Rebbe for his own benefit, you could say, better to be strict. But Maker did, you don't have to say anything.
Even leftovers, try to serve.
Only right before you eat it.
Only
Only right before you eat it. Whether it's from last night or from today, but you have to do it right before you eat it. You have to plan on eating it right away, let's say. If there is leftovers, that's something else. But you have to, you can only cut it if you're planning to eat it right away.
Right. Like we discussed this last week, like a salad with small pieces. It could be allowed to eat it the next day.
If it's left over, you shouldn't, l'chatchila, do it for the sake of leaving. That's a problem. Could be even an Issa D'Oraisa. If it's cut small, for the sake of the next day, it could be an Issa D'Oraisa, according to many Rishonim. Okay, let's say you'd base inside. A person who cuts a vegetable very small is chai because of Tochen. It's not allowed to cut dried dates, I think this is, and carob in front of the old people. It's only also fruit and similar things. We said this already. You're allowed to cut bread in front of the chickens because it's already been crushed. It's no problem. This is only if you're going to leave it. If you can eat it right away, it's all mutter. Become boyer for the sake of eating it right away, which is mutter. The same thing. Okay, Rabbi Isai, we're going on to the Alter Rebbe. No, it doesn't mean Paris without yeah. It means Paris and not pas. Kadome, Peirot and Yirakot. It means low pat, not bread. No, כיוצא בזה, זה הכל נחלק. וכדומה. Okay, my friends. Zion and the Alter Rebbe. Yeah. הצורך לא דוח פלפלין וכייצא בין ליטל נסיך המייכל בשבס. מותר ליכטש אויסה בשינו גרום דרך החול. When a person needs to crush peppercorns or the like to mix them with food on Shabbos, it is permitted to crush them by making a major deviation from the manner in which he crushes them during the week. I want to point out that from the language of the Alter Rebbe, we see that it's only mutter because you need it for your food on Shabbos. Even the Shinui Gadol, they only allowed it so you should have some benefit for food. Not stam to go ahead and do a malacha b'shinui Gadol. Kigoin biyad shel sakin. Chiyetze boy. Afil harbe biyachad. Avalei b'modach afilo en hashav v'kedaka b'chol ela shel eitz chiyetze boy. For example, using the handle of a knife and the like, one may even crush a large amount of spice together in such a manner. One may not however crush the spices with a pestle, even if it is made of wood or the like and not of stone, which he generally uses during the week. Note 36 says, grinding is one of the labors forbidden on Shabbos, hence crushing spices is forbidden only when one deviates significantly from his ordinary practice. 37, Mishnah Berurah 321 emphasizes that one may only crush spices that he will need for that Shabbos. It's not permitted to prepare them for the coming weekdays. Kavachaim is even more stringent, does not allow crushing spices on Shabbos for a meal that will be eaten later on that day. 38, for as stated in the following subsection, that appears as a mundane activity which is not appropriate for Shabbos. ויש אומרים שצורך גם כן שיודוך גם כן בסך הקרח היוצא בו. אבל למחתש אז נבלי שקוישס ביד של סכן היוצא בו. There are authorities who maintain that one must also crush the spices in a plate or the like, but not in a mortar, even though he uses the handle of the knife or the like. The person's deviation is thus twofold. He is using the handle of a knife instead of a pestle and a wooden bowl instead of a mortar. Okay, here's a chiddush which I didn't say until now. It's from the Taz. Listen carefully. Okay, you want to crush the pepper, but you don't want to crush it in a way that it's going to fly into many areas. I mean, you're going to do it with a knife on a plate. What if it spreads out? So you want to put a little handkerchief around it, keep it all in place, and crush it. No, because you're being moiled reach. You are creating a smell in that handkerchief, even though that's not your intention. What's the difference? Plastic bag, maybe. Something that's made to throw out, maybe, because it's not important. But something that you're deciding to throw out, I don't think so. One should not place peppercorns on a garment and crush them with a knife because this imparts a fragrance to the garment, even though he does not intend to do so, as will be explained in section 511. See the Kuntruzachron to that section, which discusses the subject at length, and in contrast to ruling here, concludes that one will perform an action that causes the garment to become scented if that is not its intent. Shabbos Kalacha states that one will rely on the leniency stated in section 511, since that is the source which discusses these laws thoroughly. Okay, this is also the psak of the Mishnah Berurah there for your information. Here he passes like the Taz, both the Alter Rebbe and Mishnah Berurah, that it's aser, but in Hilchos Yantav Tavkuf Yud Aleph, they both say, interestingly, that it's mutter, because it's not your intention. That it's only also to be moiled reach if you do it intentionally, not if you do it unintentionally. And Rabbi Forkash says, this is a very interesting klal in halacha. There's a contradiction between two statements in halacha. You paskin like the one that is the main discussion of that source. Understand? Here, the whole concept of Hailadas Reach comes in on the side. It's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about Tochen. Taz says, oh, by the way, don't do it with a cloth. Tavkuf Yud Aleph is where he discusses it by Arichos, and that's where he comes to a conclusion on that topic itself. So that's what we go by. I believe you are, yeah.
So if I'm just crashing the pepper on the bagel, so I want to take the bagel out and put it in the back to remove fat.
That's already something else. That's not the same.
Why?
Because now you want to be moiled. Later on, you're going to use it. No, that's not good. It has to be right now. It's lahavir, not to make it and then I use it.
No.
Right now, you want it. Doesn't make a difference. It's two separate actions. Lo makabel and lo makabel. Lahafir, that's worse. Here, where you don't intend for it at all. No, not to be able to actually chase. There, you don't care about the reach at all. When I put the air freshener in the bathroom, my purpose is to get rid of the bad smell. I don't care for the good smell. All I care is to get rid of the bad smell. Here, you want it. Here, oh, I got it. Oh, now that I have it, I'm going to put it there. You understand? That's awesome.
Unless you don't need to.
No. It's not, because you're first taking it and then using it. It has to be instantaneous. There are authorities who permit crushing peppercorns on a mortar using the handle of an knife, as explained, nevertheless, it's desirable to be stringent where possible. It is forbidden to cut peppercorns with a knife, even to take them immediately. These laws apply to all spices, for they are only eaten when mixed with other foods. Rabbi Sai, here's a chiddush that we didn't say until now. But first, let me read note 41. See section 202, which explains the peppercorns and other spices are not eaten in the English online. I have notes here. See section 202, which explains that peppercorns and other spices are not eaten by themselves, rather mixed with other foods. See also subsection from this section. Rabbi said, listen carefully. We said already in the Mechaber, and the other was going to say it soon, that when it comes to cutting edible foods, if you're doing it, maybe it's mutter gomer, even small. Maybe it's asr, and you should do it a little bit smaller than usual. However, the Alter Rebbe is saying here, there is no such heter when it comes to spices. When it comes to spices, even the Rashba will forbid you to cut peppercorns very small. Why? Because it's not considered food. It's only edible when you mix it with something. That's not considered food. In other words, when I want to eat a steak, I mean, steak is not a good example, it's not good karka, but when I want to eat a cucumber and I cut it up, that's considered part of eating. When I want to eat a salad and I crush the pepper before, that's not part of eating, because I don't eat pepper. I use the pepper to flavor the salad. Of course, I eat it, but I don't eat it for itself, I eat it for its flavor. So when I cut it, it's not considered part of eating, it's considered part of food preparation. Once it's food preparation, that's also, you can't do malacha in food preparation. You understand? Just like you can't cook, even though you're going to eat it, that's not allowed. It's only if it's part of the achila that it's mutter. So cutting something that's itself edible is part of the achila. Cutting something that's going to give taste to something else is not considered part of the achila. Same thing, yeah. Anything you don't eat on its own, it only flavors something else, would be the same. Okay, Ches. Originally, Rafal told me that he wanted the meeting to be at 10 to 10, so I still have hope that he's going to show up. I will call over Haroy La'achila Kamoy Shehu, Ve'ene Gedule Karka, Shein Vinet China Klal, Kegoin Osem Bavushel Tzoli Agvino Chayetz Ben Mutter Lachtech Dak Dak, Afilu Shloi Lechel Miyad Mepnei Shein Tchina Ba'oichlin. In contrast, any substance, that is fit to be eaten on its own, in its present state, and is not a product of the earth. We're going to get back to products of the earth later. But for now, Alter Rebbe is focusing on things that are not products of the earth, because he's going through the rules one at a time, right? He started with pepper, the way you're allowed to do it and the way you're not allowed to do it. And then he goes from that to meat. Not sure why he follows this order. I guess the Mechaber also does. But it's interesting that he says the exceptions before the rule. You would think he would say the rule, which is what you're not allowed to do with vegetables, and then say the exception, which is the meat and the bread. But anyway, this is also the order of the Mechaber. Okay, the bottom line is, Shein minit china klal, kegon bas avushel etzali agvino chiyetz ben mutter lachtech dak dak, afilu shlilach miyad ne shein tchina boich. That's not gedule karka. That's not gedule karka. Read what he says. Kol davar la'achila k'moishu ve'ena gedule karka. Shein minit china klal. And he says, for example, bas avushel etzali agvino, bulam ne shein tchina boichlin that are not gedule karka. That's what he means. I'm sorry? Correct. Gedule karka is going to discuss later. We're going to see. In contrast, any substance that is fit to be eaten. It could be, I'm not sure about this, but it could be that he wants to use this expression, Ein Tchina Ba'ochlin, without saying, he doesn't say clearly, Ein Tchina Ba'ochlin Shehein Einam Gedule Karka, because some Rishonim say, Ein Tchina Ba'ochlin Bechlal. Understand? If you remember, we had some of the Rishonim, the way they learned Pshat in the Gemara there, maybe it only applies to silka, maybe it only applies to palm trees, maybe it only applies to things that have to be cooked. You understand? There are some that say Ein Tchina Ba'ochlin Bechlal. Now, the Rebbe doesn't pass them like them, but he uses that expression because he doesn't want to get into that machlokes. It just says it. In contrast, any substance that is fit to be eaten in its present state and is not a product of the earth and which is almost never ground, which is almost never ground. What? Who did this translation? Which is almost never ground? My goodness. I don't agree with this at all. What? The major problem is that they didn't listen to me. I was the editor of this simon, and I'm pretty sure I made a correction when it came to this, and they didn't correct it. Gotta make a note of it and write to him.
Well, trying to sleep is coming.
One more time. It's already 10 to 10. Sorry about this. I don't know what happened to him. Okay, the way I would translate She'ein b'mino tchina klal is not the way he does. The way he translates it is which is almost never ground. That's not the pshat, in my opinion. The pshat is she'ein b'mino et tchina klal. In that species, the laws of tchina don't apply. That's what it means. Ein b'mino et tchina means this min does not have the laws of tchina. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to have to give up on a fall. I'm going to have to say that something happened. Something came up. I don't know. Sorry about that, everybody. I do apologize. כן, כנראה, לא יודע מה להגיד לך, מצטער. מותר לך דק, אפילו שלא מיד. It is permitted to be diced into very small pieces, even when one does not intend to eat them immediately thereafter. 1 second, we have to say l'chaim. 1 second, no, I want to say l'chaim. Before you leave, 1 second. Even one does not intend to eat them immediately after because the forbidden labor of grinding does not apply to food. What time is it in the Kollel?
10 minutes.
So, okay, so let's just say l'chaim before we break up. We'll have to pick up from this place next time. This is just in honor of Yisrael. Arya Laban Zev Wolf. Vodka, whiskey, anybody? What are you drinking? Medal Chaim?
Yes.
I'll tell you what, put one little drop in. So that.
He's labeled Goldshire. It's sponsored in his memory. David Leib?
Everybody? Hi.
Say? Agasha. 1 second, I'll take a picture for the sake of the sponsor. This is it. Excellent. All right. Shalom Shalom Aliyah. Thank you all for coming. Take some mazonos with you for the road. Tomorrow night, I do want to.
I closed the light. Closed the door.
Over there?
Yeah, I bring all the stuff here.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And the door to the outside also?
Yes.
Okay. Rabbi Isai, I know we said we're going to learn Hilchos Yom Tov tomorrow, but I would like just to finish this discussion. So we're going to finish till the Alter Rebbe Yud Dalet tomorrow. Rosh Chodesh Tov. Thank you. Don't forget Yalav Yavai. And then we'll do some Hilchos Yom Tov. But I do want to finish this discussion. The simon, you got to be kidding. It's not a short simon. In the Alter Rebbe, it's short, but that's because it's missing the last part. In the Big Shulchan Aruch, it's not short. Okay, have a good night, everybody. And
Good night. Thank you very much.
we needed you before. Where were you?
I slipped in slightly, I'm afraid. I apologize.
All right, I mentioned your name because I said that that raw beets, when they're sliced very thin, are considered edible.
Yes.
Correct or incorrect?
Yes, that's right. You sometimes find them in salads.
Yes. So I thought,
I was also going to ask about steak tartare because we talk about cooked meat, but I imagine that raw meat, because you're going to eat it, is in the same boat.
so my understanding of it is, I gotta think about that. So steak tartare, does it have to be cut small or can it be just a regular piece?
Some people cut steak tartare fairly large. Personally, I don't. I do it very small,
Right.
but it is done large.
Right. So here's the thing. When it comes to birds, so the meat is not edible to the birds until you cut it small. So and it's not considered food for most people because most people don't eat it raw, and it's not considered animal food because you wouldn't feed it to the animals. That's the issue, to the dogs, I mean. But in terms of your cutting it for a person who is willing to eat, because there is no real change from before till after. In other words, most people wouldn't eat it either way. And for him, he could eat it whether it's, cut small or not cut small. So cutting it small, it would seem, is not considered tochen. See what I'm saying? As far as he's concerned, it's edible before and it's edible after. As far as the others are concerned, it's not edible at all. You hear me?
You're not going to eat a raw steak. I mean, some people might, but nobody
You put something on it, you put it in dip or something. I don't know. How do you prepare it?
Well, if you cut small pieces off, you would eat it, but you wouldn't eat the whole thing. You wouldn't take a bite out of it, but you would cut a small piece and eat a thin slice and eat it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say cut small, some people make steak tartare, I would say, in let's say half an inch cube.
In what? Sorry?
A half-inch cube.
Mm-hmm. But I'm saying the reason that they cut it small is because it's not edible when it's large, or because it's just easier to eat when it's small.
That's a good question. I would say nobody would make steak tartare as 1 inch by 1 inch because you'll be chewing forever.
I see.
But a half inch by a half inch, the slight amount of chewing people would do.
Interesting. Very interesting. I didn't see it discussed, so I hesitate to say one way or the other. But it could be that it is also. It could be if it's not considered edible until it's cut fairly small. So maybe it is also. But I've never seen that, so that would be a chiddush. We have to do more research on that.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious. Okay. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you very much.
Bye.